Good morning to you, and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Miriam Ogutu. The show is Diaspora Dispatches. But before we get into the main story of the day, the topic that we shall be looking at on Zimbabwe, will take us through what we normally go through: the papers, the local newspapers, and then we shall discuss some of the topics on the leading newspapers, and then we shall come back to that topic this morning. Before I go further, we are joined by Paul Onyango from Nairobi. Paul, a very good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Miriam. I'm well and alive.
All right, nice to see you this morning, Paul. And we're also joined by Daniel Wasonga. Daniel, a very good morning to you.
Yes, very good morning to you, Miriam Mokutu, at our headquarters in Nairobi. Good morning to my brother Paulo Nyango, our viewers here in Nairobi, Kenya, East Africa, and the rest of the globe who are watching us this particular morning. It is my pleasure to be on the conversation this particular morning.
Indeed, and we do have so much to talk about today. But before that, let me just take us through the headlines very quickly, and then we will start our conversation. The Star newspaper, the main headline: Uhuru Raila new window to bring back BBI reggae. 7-judge bench overturns 5 of 7 grounds the Court of Appeal used to annul BBI-driven constitutional amendments. The story is on page 4 and 5. Raila to attend the Kibor's burial, address rallies in Ruto's staff, that is on page 7. And suspect goes missing after killing girlfriend in Machakos, that is page 7 also. And Ruto to ex-Prime Minister, keep my name out of your campaign rallies, that is on page 8 on the Star newspaper. On the Daily Nation, the main headline: Reggae is dead. In a surprisingly fair and even-handed decision, the Supreme Court rules Uhuru can't be sued while in office, but had no business changing our constitution. Judges consign the BBI bill to the same fate as the Dodo. As a consequence, shut down lower courts' attempts to make it impossible to change the law, and the rule that basic structure doctrine should just stay in India and not be brought here. That is on a special coverage and analysis on page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, 12, and 13 inside the Daily Nation. The young and the restless, and the young people who are joining politics now. And of course, Jubilee raises dividends to 1 billion Kenya shillings to high profits. I think that is the Jubilee Insurance, if I'm not wrong. That is on page 28. Ruto allies read malice in ODM-led allegations about Uhuru ouster plot. That is on page 14 on the Daily Nation. On the Standard newspaper, Supreme blow to BBI, that is on page 4, 6, 7, and 9. And just up there, fuel shortage crisis and 32 billion query Kenya shillings. And then FIFA inflicts more pain on Kenya. So that is what we have on the front pages of the leading newspapers this morning. So before we even get into the story itself, I'll start with you, Paul. How the headlines that we've seen and how the different newspapers have captured it. How do you look at that? The different captions of the same story by the leading newspapers this morning.
Okay, for me, I can see that most dailies were talking about what happened at Supreme Court yesterday. They covered different opinions of different judges, and also generally how the Kenyans have received the news about the collapse of BBI at Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. Now, what we are now left with is to focus on the political activities from now until August. Maybe if there's a chance for Kenyans to go back and review according to the Supreme Court's directions, where BBI may have left the rail, we come back with a new strategy such that the things which were proposed or what Kenyans were looking for can come back and give us a new life in our life with the new constitutions.
Very well. Thank you so much. Daniel Osonga, the Standard newspaper, supreme blow to BBI, the Daily Nation, reggae is dead, and the Star newspaper, Uhuru Raila, new window to bring back BBI reggae. How do you make out, the way the different newspapers have their headlines on the same story this morning?
Thank you so much, Miriam Mogutu. And of course, like many other Kenyans, I was also watching the proceedings of the Supreme Court from the inception until the time the verdict was given. And from where I sit, I think the Star newspaper, amongst the local dailies, has got it very right that, this verdict by the Supreme Court actually rejuvenates a new bid by the handshake duo to actually be able to start again and be able to drum up support for the BBI agenda. Remember, there were 7 questions which were submitted to the Supreme Court in regards to the matter how the lower courts, that is the High Court and the Appellate Court, were able to rule on this particular matter. And therefore, when you see the verdict that was given, out of the 7 questions that were submitted to the Supreme Court, actually 5 were able to sail through. And the Supreme Court was very, very clear that perhaps the lower courts did not actually base some of the rulings on the legal basis or nexus that is there to actually be able to give such a direction. In that you realize that the Appellate Court and the High Court had actually crippled the BBI process in its entirety. There is no way the promoters of the BBI would have had an opportunity once again to start over the process had the Supreme Court not overturned whatever the Appellate Court and the High Court had done to the BBI agenda. So with the 5 out of 7 questions being given a leeway, I believe now the promoters of the BBI can be able to gather dust and go back to the people again, probably after the elections, and be able to do everything as maybe guided by the verdict of the Supreme Court. So I believe, to me, yesterday, it wasn't victory for the for the other side of the divide, which was against the antagonist of the BBI process. But this was a victory actually for the appellant, who is the Attorney General, and any other person perhaps who supports BBI either through the legal process or maybe just by solidarity, because the 5 clauses or the 5 questions that were ruled in favor of the BBI appellant actually means that in a bigger percentage, the Supreme Court actually agreed with the Attorney General, and it agreed with the promoters of the BBI. Same for the 2 questions which were against the law, which were deemed unconstitutional. If those were perhaps the only impediments to the BBI sailing through, then I believe the BBI has every advantage, or maybe the team that was working on BBI has every advantage to go back to the drawing board and come up with a new initiative that will be able to sail through this time round, Miriam. Because I believe the reason why even the Attorney General had to go to the Supreme Court is because the Appellate Court had actually thrown the judicial maybe space into some kind of confusion with the basic structure doctrine, which is something quite new in the Kenyan maybe legal framework. And it was perceived by pundits, and of course Dr. Masanga was among the people who talked about that this legal structure framework hogwash. The first time when it came on board by the High Court and the Supreme Court and the Appellate Court, and this was a contentious matter that perhaps the clarity from the Supreme Court will actually now give the proponents of BBI a headway to proceed and be able to revive this particular initiative. So to me, Miriam, I believe the ruling yesterday gave the proponents of BBI another maybe spark to go back and reignite the fire maybe and be able to bring on board a very, very legal binding maybe process that will be able to sail through all the way to a referendum. But of course, we understand that we are only 4 months to the election, the general election, and I believe these judges ruled considering that perhaps if they say that the BBI could be restored fully, and maybe these 5 maybe clauses that were in tandem with the law outweigh maybe the 2 that were not in tandem with the law, and therefore give a green light to the BBI, perhaps it would have interfered with our elections, which are only 4 months away, and they wouldn't have wanted maybe to throw the country into such kind of a crisis, an electoral crisis, as it might have been. So to me, I think they ruled in consideration of so many things. Remember also, we had a critical question of whether the IEBC was constitutionally maybe able to be to conduct the signature verification, which the court ruled that it was legally constituted. However, it lacked quorum to be able to do the verification of signatures. But that does not maybe thwart or maybe make the process of the IEBC or maybe the roles of the IEBC to be null and void under the law. So to me, I think that is also another second consideration that they made. But all in all, Miriam, I believe this ruling actually gave a new breath of fire to the BBI initiative. And if the promoters of the BBI agenda will be able to win the forthcoming election in August, then I believe they have a bigger room, from the Supreme Court to go back to the drawing board and start all over again. So to me, I think the Star newspaper has captured it right. It is not the end of the BBI. Rather, BBI is on halftime. And I believe once the Azimio la Umoja team, which have been the proponents of BBI, actually seize power, they will be able to go to the ground and do everything procedurally in accordance with the law. And soon enough, we might have BBI bounce back and reggae will be on.
Thank you so much. And as the Star newspaper has captured it this morning, the basic structure, had proved to be a bigger roadblock, and now that it has been ruled that it does not apply in this jurisdiction, so that means that that roadblock has been removed, and now perhaps the BBI proponents have a new lease of life, if you may look at the other side of the coin, to bring back the BBI and perhaps address the things that still has some legal problems in that, and then should they decide to bring back the BBI. But also IBC seems to have gotten a reprieve from this ruling yesterday, Onyango.
Okay, the concept of basic structure was the main impediment in the whole exercise of BBI, because it was making very difficult for the proponents to move forward from where they started it. We were being taken back as if we were starting the way 2010 constitution was started. The people were arguing against the formation of BBI task force, the way it was implemented, the way they went around. They were saying that formation was not according to the way 2010 constitution was started. Given that 2010, for the 2010 constitution, the way it was for its formation was based on the other constitution. So given that we had already moved on to a new constitution from 2010, I think they were just moving a step much further. So given that the basic structure concept, even where it was it originated from India is exercising a parliamentary system of government. Meanwhile, in Kenya, we are under presidential system. So when you make a ruling based on two different systems of governments, it was making it very much difficult for most of us to understand how this concept was basically applying to us in Kenya. So I think when what judges, their ruling to me was a plus. It was giving those who believe in BBI a headway, maybe where there was a bit of a hitch, where they were saying that the president was not able to start how do you call it, a popular initiative. Yes. So I think the basic structure concept, I followed the way Mr. Rengo, Mr. Raro, and Mr. Gido Migai. They gave it more what? They gave it more explanation, and I was convinced. But what they were what they were giving out, their submissions in the court. For me, I followed them for a long time, so I was convinced by what they were telling about the basic structure concept. So that's my take.
All right, thank you so much. Just a recap of that ruling yesterday from the Apex Court here on the ruling on the BBI. First one is the president cannot initiate constitutional amendments through the popular initiative, what you've just said there, Paul. The president initiated the BBI amendment according to the judgment. It was found that the president indeed initiated this amendment, and consequently the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill 2020 is unconstitutional. I think that was the main contentious, article. And then the second schedule of the bill is unconstitutional for lack of public participation, and civil proceedings cannot be initiated in any court against the president or the person performing the functions of the office during the tenure. The IEBC was obligated to ensure BBI promoters complied with the requirements for public participation, and the finding of the court is there was public participation with respect to the BBI bill. And the IEBC has the right, composition and quorum to undertake the signature verification process. And then on whether the bill should contain multiple single referendum questions, the court said it was not ripe for determination. And of course, each party to bear their own cost. I think for the civil proceedings that cannot be instituted in any court against the president, I think that is something that we all know, and we were surprised that this was not the ruling in the previous courts. Why do you think this was so, Daniel?
Miriam, there is something that the Supreme Court and more so the Chief Justice actually brought out from the ruling yesterday. If you are able to keenly follow her readings and her judgment, she said that the lower courts, that is the High Court and the Appellate Court, were in some way trying to actually overstep their mandate. And they tried in so many ways to actually hijack the will of the people of Kenya. And this is what previously perhaps Dr. Masanga talked about, a judicial coup happening here in Kenya. And you realize that in this judicial coup, judges are going in overstepping their mandate, in that even some of their rulings have the sound and the drift of a total witch hunt. And therefore, you saw even yesterday, the judges of the Supreme Court, none of them actually referred to the president as Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta. But whatever you could hear in the lower courts, in the Court of Appeal and the High Court, was pure malice, hatred, and revenge, from these judges. And therefore, I believe this bitterness that they had with the president, this bitterness with the executive arm of government, was actually what blurred their ruling, in that they gave very, very ridiculous rulings in the previous, in the respective courts. It is quite a big shame that out of the 7 questions that emanated from the rulings from the lower courts, only 2 were the Supreme Court was in agreement with them, which means if it was an exam, they actually failed. They scored 2 out of 7. And that is something that should actually ring a bell into the minds of these judges. We do not need activists in our courts. We do not need judges of a lower conscience, judges who do not put into their framework the interests of the people of Kenya when making judgments. Judges who do not go out there to make outrageous rulings that could actually divide this nation. And the Chief Justice was very, very clear that the handshake is an act of statesmanship and patriotism, an action that is actually meant to bring the people of Kenya together and strengthen the country's unity of purpose. Which means that, they did not, the Supreme Court did not see, or rather the Chief Justice Martha Koome did not see any kind of malice in the handshake. Whereas some judges in the lower courts were making a ruling that would make the handshake look as if it is some kind of conmanship and, it is some kind of treachery against the people of the Republic of Kenya. So to me, Miriam, I believe there is something which needs to be checked in our lower courts. There is something which needs to be checked about these judges. Do they have something that they are hiding? On whose behest were they acting in that giving the outrageous rulings that were almost overturned entirely by the Supreme Court? When you hear about the what they call the doctrine of the basic structure, all the Supreme Court judges except for Justice Ibrahim, they actually disagreed with it, and they said, you know, this is a very, very disillusioned, and it's just a mere imagination of the judiciary, you know, just trying to hijack the will of the people of Kenya. And the Chief Justice said that it is quite immoral to hijack the will of people of the Republic of Kenya, amongst who, in the 44 out of 47 counties, actually passed the BBI bill overwhelmingly. So that actually tells you that whatever these lower courts were doing is actually legal, and it could be punishable, you know, if we were in a better society, by having these judges actually resigning from their courts, because it means they're actually misleading the people of Kenya. They're not doing their homework well when it comes to research and anchoring and having a nexus in their rulings as judges. Rather, they're depending on other rulings that were made in other circumstances that cannot be applicable here in Kenya. Miriam, if you listen to the ruling or the judgment by Justice Ibrahim, you could hear him actually referring most of his judgment to the rulings that were made from the lower courts. And that begs the question, Miriam, to be asked that why will he be paid if he is only basing on the rulings of the lower courts? It's like he's just importing data from the lower courts and making it his own ruling. Why isn't he going out there and make a comparative analysis that like the rest of the judges did, and actually be able to debunk or maybe add value to whatever the lower courts ruled against or in favor of? So I think, Miriam, we have a bigger problem in this country, and this bigger problem starts with the judiciary being full of activists, the judiciary being in control of ulterior outside forces that wanted to actually occasion a judicial coup against the Republic of Kenya, a judiciary which have activists who want to usurp the will and the mandate of the people of Kenya of deciding their own destiny. Remember, that right cannot be taken away from the people of Kenya. And if the ruling by the Chief Justice herself is anything to go by, then that should tell you that the people are supreme to the law of the land, because it is the people who make the law, and the people cannot live as in servitude of this particular law. Whenever we wish that we need to change this constitution, then we must go ahead using proper channels and be able to question a referendum, or maybe through our representative, that is Parliament and the Senate, and have these laws changed so that they are able to align with our aspirations, with our beliefs, and whichever thing that we understand that is gonna make our lives better as a people. But in that regard, when you look at this 2010 constitution, it has never been amended. Any trial to have it amended through a popular initiative has always been thwarted, unlike the older constitution, which had been amended several times. What does that mean? It means that there are aspects of this constitution, either legal or maybe through other agencies like the judiciary, which have made the review of this constitution unattainable, and therefore we cannot just sit pretty well and maybe imagine that everything is okay. A constitution is not law cast on stone. It is a document which will be a living document, an organic document that allows the subjects who are governed by this document to actually periodically review it and always align it with the prevailing circumstances, with the changing times as well, Miriam. So I believe this doctrine of the structure doctrine of the Constitution, which was a disillusion and an alien, we'll call it an alien, maybe a doctrine of which is a creation of the judicial structure that we have, maybe the judiciary rather, is something that was actually clipping the wings of our constitution in its bid to be able to evolve and be able to grow and align with the aspiration of the people of Kenya. Remember, this constitution, the 2010 constitution, was a hybrid constitution. We borrowed some things which are of the federal nature from America, you know, like the devolved system of government, the counties and all that. We also retained some things which were in our old constitution, which is a Commonwealth constitution. And therefore, it is a hybrid constitution of which you cannot say that it is a final document, thereby no changes can be done to it. There's nothing that can be edited. No letter or number can be deleted or added on it. So therefore, we need a conversation around that. And the only way the Supreme Court will have done justice to this constitution and allow the reviewing of the constitution is through deleting that misinformed basic structure doctrine, which was introduced clandestinely into the constitution or maybe into a law by the judiciary. So the judiciary cannot be a law unto itself. And I believe that is the big win that the people of Kenya and the proponents of BBI had yesterday. Once we are done with that, I believe we shall be able to review our constitution, which is good for any progressive country. We cannot just have the laws of 2010 guiding and maybe being able to govern us in the 2022, because the world is changing. Dynamics are ever evolving and changing. And therefore, our constitution should also change. You have seen in the old constitution, we have been unable to achieve the 2/3 gender rule. What do we do about it? We need a constitutional change moment. We have been unable even to share our resources equitably, owing to the fact that we have marginalized areas. We have areas who have maybe a high population density than the others. Therefore, sharing of the national cake becomes a problem. How do we go about it without changing the constitution? There is no way you can go about that without changing the constitution. And therefore, Miriam, even people who are saying that, we should be talking about an economic moment and not a constitutional moment, they're actually disillusioned. If you ask them how they're gonna add maybe even maybe 100 billion to the marginalized counties, if you ask them how they're gonna share, I've heard the deputy president talk about maybe giving 100 billion to the hustlers to be able to boost their businesses and grow the bottom-up economy. If you ask them how they're gonna do that without changing the constitution, they're actually unable to answer you how their model is gonna work without changing the constitution. So therefore, Miriam, the change of this 2010 constitution to review it, to make it better, is actually an inevitable fit for us, because at the end of the day, we will have to change it, we will have to align it so that it favors each and every one of us, and more specifically the majority. Because remember, even those who are in Kenya Kwanza, who are against the BBI at this moment, some of them were actually voting for the same BBI. Musalia Mudavadi was, Moses Wetangula was, and therefore even Moses Kuria has said that BBI was good. The only problem was the process that it was being implemented. And that tells you that even for Kenya Kwanza to be able to share and be able to, maybe if they win government, God forbid, to be able to share the slots among themselves, they will need BBI. For them to be able to entice other regions like Mount Kenya region, they will need BBI. So at the end of the day, BBI will have surfaced the needs and the agenda of each political player. And I believe the other side was only against BBI because of the promoters of the BBI was on the other side of the political divide. And that is why I always say that sometimes our politics are stronger than our economics and our policies. If we can be able to get the politics out of BBI, which Dr. Masanga always advocated for, we would have had the BBI go through, and these would have helped and changed the lives of so many Kenyans. If you ever read the BBI proposals on your own, without any political inclination, without being influenced by anyone, you will say from the very go that this was a well-intended document, Miriam. I submit.
All right, thank you so much. Onyango, still staying with this matter as we move on to another one, just in a quick bit. When you look at the ruling yesterday, would you say this was a loss or a detour?
Okay, to some extent, it is a loss because
could you explain that?
Time was okay. To some extent, we can say there is a loss because we used money to make meetings. All that is a past. Now we can't move on. So that value for the money is gone, which means that the exercise, if we were to repeat it, we still have to look for more money to put on the same thing. Again, when you look at the time the courts have taken in introducing the basic structure from the High Court to the Appellate Court, had it been that this basic structure concept was not introduced from the lower court, from the High Court to the Appellate Court, it may have saved time. Maybe if there was any other issues that to do with maybe the president cannot initiate a popular initiative, those also might have given them time to come back and relook at the whole idea, then venture into another, we can talk about the parliamentary system, the parliamentary way initiative, where they may have taken that issue to parliament so that they can make the major amendments through parliament. That's my take.
Okay, thank you. So all is not lost. All right, Daniel, as we conclude on this matter, of course, we know that when the proponents of the BBI decided to go appeal this case at the Apex Court, that is at the Supreme Court of Kenya, there was some mixed feelings. Others were feeling, let's just leave that alone. We don't have time. Let's just focus on the campaigns right now and all that. But, you know, they surprised us with the last move. We thought maybe that was done with after that ruling in the High Court. When you look at all this right now and maybe and how the judgment was made yesterday, do you think it was worth it? Was the appeal worth it?
First of all, maybe let me draw some clarity on this matter. You know, there has been a misplaced perspective or perception that the handshake team actually went all the way to the Supreme Court on the matters regarding the BBI. It is not the handshake team. Rather, this matter was taken to the Supreme Court by the Attorney General. And remember, the Attorney General is actually responsible for the legal matters pertaining government. And therefore, you know, when some of the matters that were a bit or a bone of contentions, like the structure, the basic structure doctrine, he needed some clarity from the Supreme Court. And it's only the Supreme Court, the highest court of the land, that can give and settle matters in that regard. Also, there was a question of whether the president can be prosecuted or he has full immunity during his tenure in office, which was also still a pending and an open matter, where maybe perhaps a legal jurisprudence had not been given with the finality. And therefore, the Attorney General needed the closure on these particular matters in terms of ruling. Because you realize that if the ruling by the High Court and the Appellate Court would have been left pending, then we will have carried forward these problems to the next dispensation, which means there would have been maybe a bone of contentions to come, maybe in future days. So to me, it was akin to a problem being postponed, of which the Attorney General did the noble thing to go to the to the Supreme Court as soon as possible, so that we have this matter settled and we know the clear way forward in regard to this matter, this contentious matter. And thus, particular matter formed the basis of these 7 questions to the Supreme Court, so that from the Supreme Court, we can be able to know this is how this matter is actually supposed to be handled, with a finality, without having maybe to revisit the matter in future days and having lawyers going to the courtroom, wasting all that time, people wasting resources, arguing about whether or not the basic structure is viable, or whether or not the president can be prosecuted, whether or not, you know, the president can be able to initiate a popular, to initiate a popular maybe drive like the BBI and all that. So to me, it is just like the olden days, when everything else below maybe the ruling class, you know, failed. People will actually go to the king, or maybe they will go to the judges and maybe the teachers of the law, and they will ask, what does the law say about this particular matter or this particular matter? And the law will actually be interpreted for them, and that will actually be the final maybe opinion of it, and people will actually abide by what these maybe leaders in high offices or maybe the high hierarchy of the law will actually say about it. It's a common practice across the globe, and the Supreme Court, being the highest court of the land, had the prerogative actually to define and be able to interpret these particular matters to the Attorney General, so that as the time goes by and in the course of undertaking his duties, he can know how to do the things right with maybe the knowledge and being informed of the law as it should be. So to me, I think this was a matter before the Attorney General. This was an action, or maybe a step which was taken by exclusively the Attorney General of Kenya, and it had nothing to do with Azimio la Umoja or maybe the handshake partners, because in as much as we are concerned, the lawyers representing both sides, the Azimio la Umoja and maybe the Jubilee side of government, actually said they were actually compliant, maybe they agreed with the ruling of the Court of the Appeal, and they were not going to pursue any further legal deliberations on the matter, and therefore they were concentrating on their campaigns and winning the presidency in August. But remember, in as much as these other lawyers are representing Raila Odinga, President Uhuru Kenyatta, Jubilee Party, or maybe the ODM or the opposition party were concerned, still the Attorney General, as the government's lawyer, had actually the mandate and the duty to go ahead and make to close this case, rather, to make sure that everything is settled, and moving forward, we shall have a clear way on this particular matter, which is something I'll commend him for. And therefore, Miriam, it is very, very much maybe misinformed when we see Kenyans saying that perhaps the handshake team has met another setback in this particular matter. No way. This matter was settled at the appellate court, and whatever the Supreme Court has done is actually to define law and to be able to elaborate and give direction to him in according to these particular issues that were raised in the lower court. And therefore, in doing so, actually, you also realize that even the earlier petitioners of the BBI bill actually are also able to get some light on how they are able to maybe redo the same process while abiding by the law in regards to the ruling of the Supreme Court. So to me, I think, Miriam, it's a good thing that he went ahead to apply, an appeal in the Supreme Court. And therefore, moving forward, we shall be able to get an informed maybe direction on these particular matters. So I don't think maybe it sheds some negative light on the opposition or any party who was maybe working in supporting the BBI agenda in any way. I submit.
All right, thank you so much. And of course, there was a varied of reaction from across leaders and of course Kenyans in the same light. So let me just read a few here that has been captured by the Standard newspaper. ODM leader and opposition leader, and of course the handshake brother to President Uhuru Kenyatta. This is what he said: "We will not stop deliberations on the way forward to a future that protects the interests of those who voted for the amendments." And then Kalonzo Musyoka, the Wiper leader: "Nobody can afford to say BBI is dead. If anything, the court's finding on basic structure have made our route much clearer. Soon after the election, we will revisit and make a very quick job of it." Okay, and then Musalia Mudavadi, he said, "Now that the BBI is null and void, those responsible for it must be held to account for the resources that were put in that criminal exercise." And Deputy President William Ruto tweeted, "The end of reggae is the end of political treachery. The handshake brothers and promoters of BBI must now apologize to Kenyans." That is what some of them said. So since we've really looked at that story, let's look at a bit of politics and what happened yesterday before we move on to the topic on Zimbabwe. Deputy President William Ruto, I'm reading from page 12 of the Daily Nation. Deputy President William Ruto's camp has accused allies of Azimio la Umoja flag bearer Raila Odinga of malice over allegations that the second in command had planned to impeach President Kenyatta. Suna East Member of Parliament Junet Mohammed told the Nation in an explosive interview that Dr. Ruto offered Mr. Odinga half of all senior government positions if he helped him topple the president soon after the 2017 general election. The president hosted a Jubilee parliamentary group meeting at State House after the polls. In the meeting, it became clear that the honeymoon with his deputy was over. Mr. Kenyatta told his party's ranks that he would not share power with anyone. The remarks alarmed his deputy as it meant it would not be business as usual, Mr. Mohammed said. And Kericho Senator Aaron Cheruiyot, a close ally of the DP, termed Mr. Mohammed's revelations as baseless and aimed at tainting Dr. Ruto's image and wondered why he had contradicted his boss. Who do we believe, Mr. Odinga or Mr. Mohammed? Mr. Odinga said he was unaware of such plans. Mr. Mohammed said there was a meeting. Let them first agree on the script, and we've seen how this script, if I could borrow the words of Kericho Senator Aaron Cheruiyot, has been playing out. And yesterday we didn't have, the time to look at the newspaper, but that interview that they're referring to was on the Daily Nation, and I read through it, and a lot of revelations that were quite shocking. That interview by Suna Member of Parliament, Junet Mohammed. But why are they reading malice? And now they really have to drag Raila's name in this. It is President Uhuru Kenyatta that allegedly said these things. So why can't they, ask him, over what is really happening? Why must they drag Raila into this, Onyango?
I think this matter, given that the president himself spoke about it, the people who are now trying to run away from the whole issue, the manner in which they are trying to drag somebody into the mud is simply as a way of escaping from responding to it directly. Or they didn't have the right way, they didn't have a right judgment of how to respond to the president's sentiments. So with the nature of the politics that we have in Kenya, or some personalities in Kenya, where they are faced to, or they are put into a corner with certain questions from the public opinion or from certain institutions for them to account for the actions, they will either go around or bring other people into the picture who are not even part of the issue, such that it does not look like he is the person responsible, but the other person is responsible. Maybe he's responding to his supporters. That is my view.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, Wesonga, this story, it seems like the gift that keeps on giving, and now they're saying they're reading malice over, Raila Odinga and his camp over this story. But these are revelations that apparently President Uhuru Kenyatta shared over a week ago when he was talking to elders there from Kikuyu community. So what does this have to do with Raila? And from the story I read yesterday, what Junet said, or maybe this is where they're dragging in Raila's name. He said Ruto had started, talks with Raila. And if you can remember, there's an interview that Mohammed, who is now his communications director, the former Hussein Mohammed, the former Citizen journalist, just, over the handshake, and DP actually acknowledged having had talks with Raila about maybe 4 times or thereabout, but they could not disclose what these talks was about, or maybe he did not fully disclose. And so this is what Junet Mohammed was making reference to. Like, he tried to approach, allegedly, he tried to approach Raila over trying to topple and impeach the president, and so that the DP could be the president and then Raila could be the deputy. And then, according to the story, it is Raila that went and tipped the president on what his deputy was up to. So I don't know what you make of all this story, Daniel.
Miriam, I'll start maybe by saying that, the Igbo people say that if an alligator one morning comes out of water and actually tells you that the crocodile is sick, then you have to believe him. This is not the first time even people who are very close to the deputy president coming out to say that there was a wider scheme to actually oust President Uhuru Kenyatta, either by impeachment or maybe having a claim over his life. And that is the truth, because the president has not mentioned this once, but twice. And we have heard from other people, third parties, not once, not twice, not thrice, that there was a wider plot to either impeach the president or maybe do away with his life. And that is something very serious. And if there is any revelations maybe to go by, then I believe whatever revelations that were on the newspaper yesterday from Honorable Junet Mohammed, the Suna East Member of Parliament, because, he has been the right-hand man of the former Prime Minister. And if I remember so well, even during the handshake with the President at Harambee House, it is only Junet Mohammed and Winnie Odinga who actually accompanied the former Prime Minister. And that tells you a lot. These are confident who knows Raila Odinga inside out, whatever he deals in, whatever meetings he attends, whatever discussions he has with the other parties. And also the fact that there's an acknowledgement from the deputy president through his allies, or maybe by himself, that he had prior talks with Raila Odinga, but not with maybe revealing the details of the meetings. then that tells you that, there was something in there. In Swahili, they say lisemalo lipo, and that is what I believe. And let me maybe just put it out there, Miriam, that, the deputy president has never been truthful. He denies almost everything that comes out. And therefore, even denying this particular scheme to impeach the president, or maybe even doing away with his life, does not even surprise me. And from where I sit, whatever Raila Odinga is doing, he just doesn't want to be part of that particular business. But in as much, he has actually sent Junet Mohammed to talk on his behalf, because for himself, I think he regards that particular talk to be maybe the battle between President Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto. Because for one, it was William Ruto who was going to be the beneficiary of that particular impeachment. And number two, it was President Uhuru Kenyatta who was going to suffer a blow from that impeachment. So Raila Odinga has totally no business in that particular talk. And that is why he has directed perhaps either Junet or maybe the president and his deputy to be able to sort out the mess that they had in the Jubilee Party. Remember, in 2017, Kenyans went to the ballot to give mandate to President Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto. So whatever happens in the Jubilee government is none of Raila Odinga's problem. It's none of the problem of the people of Kenya. The president and his deputy should actually be able to sit down and sort their own issues. And we know William Ruto for who he is. At the moment Raila Odinga will start talking about the impeachment and all that, he will actually drag Raila Odinga's name into the mud and will try make it look as if Raila Odinga is the genesis of all the problems that the Jubilee government is having. Remember, even before this talk about the impeachment came on board, he has been moving around telling the people of Kenya that all the suffering that you are undergoing, the hard economic times, of course we understand we have an economic meltdown globally, but he will tell people all these economic problems that you are having, it is because of the handshake. Raila Odinga has come into the government and he is actually stealing your resources in conjunction with President Uhuru Kenyatta. So we know very well Raila Odinga is actually avoiding a direct confrontation with the deputy president, knowing how treacherous and sly the deputy president is and how he could use that particular statement to actually malign and drown Raila Odinga into drag Raila Odinga into the mud rather. So I think Raila Odinga is just saying, I don't have any business with this kind of quarrel that is between the deputy and the president. So let them sort their own mess. For me, I'm focusing on my presidency. And that is the most important matter at the end of the day. Because this thing wasn't to happen to Raila Odinga, but it was to happen between Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto. So like you said, Miriam, those who are trying to divert attention and maybe trying to rope in Raila Odinga, they actually misdirected and misguided. So I don't think maybe it is unreal. It is very real. Only that Raila Odinga doesn't want to be party to it. He wants everyone to handle their own mess, and at the end of the day, to retain his stature and the respect and the status that he has created for himself over the time as a statesman in this country. So therefore, Miriam, I believe this is a real thing that we are talking about. These are real things that were bound to happen. And that is because Junet Mohammed is a confidant of Raila Odinga. And like you've said, William Ruto has, for once, during a TV interview, agreed that there was some discussions between himself and Raila Odinga in the past. I submit.
Okay, thank you so much. And that is where we come to the end with this topic. Of course, we'll take a very short break and then we shall be back looking at the other main topic that we shall be looking at, that is Zimbabwe's election and the outcome report. Don't go too far. We shall be right back.
Zimbabwe's economy is cursed because we have a bad leadership running the treasury of the people of Zimbabwe. President Emmerson Mnangagwa should have picked a person who understands the political, social, economic apparatus of what the economy of Zimbabwe needs. President Emmerson Mnangagwa would have been able to walk out of this quagmire of the economy by picking a leader, a person who is able to manage the economy. The current Minister of Finance is a parrot of George Soros, Brent Woods institutions. He cannot run the economy. A person who always talks of hiked prices, hiked percentage, hiked fuel, cannot help you in a struggle where regime change is near the doorsteps. President Emerson Mnangagwa, dear brother, time has come to change the direction. The Zimbabwe economy is the Waterloo of the government of Zimbabwe. It is important, therefore, for us to do what we call fatigue evaluation. Is there a need for fatigue evaluation? Is the system moving forward? Is there an investment that is coming as it was, as people were willing to come with investment?